Good day.
Fucking vampires.
And finally, the third and final film in the Lost Boys trilogy, Lost Boys: The First. The movie returned with the direct-to-video format of the previous movie, and in many ways it does really feel like a follow-up to it too. The style of the movie is very similar to the second film, especially the vampire scenes. Corey Feldman returns once again to play Edgar Frog, but this time the entire film is about him instead of him just being one of the side characters. I really liked how much more we see of him because he's really the only reason people wanted to see the sequels anyway. Edgar is facing eviction and is trying to do whatever it takes to get some money to save his trailer. He is approached by a woman called Gwen, who is a famous writer of vampire romance novels. She's basically the equivalent of Stephenie Meyer. Gwen tells Edgar that her brother had been kidnapped by a group of vampires. The group travel around the world hosting raves where they give out a vial of a drug named The First. The First is actually the blood of the head vampire, and it is turning people at the raves into vampires. Kind of like Return of the Living Dead Rave to the Grave. In fact, almost exactly like it. Gwen offers Edgar a large sum of money to save her brother and stop the vampires and their leader known as DJ X. Edgar then goes to see his brother Alan, who has now been turned into a vampire. Alan works as a taxidermist and he quenches his thirst for blood on the animals that are taken in. Edgar tries to get Alan to come and help, but Alan says no. Edgar decides to do the job alone. However, Gwen tells him that not only is she coming along to help as well, that a TV survival expert is going to be joining them as well. The rest of the movie is literally just them trying to find the vampires and stop them. The first half an hour is set up and the last hour is an all-out vampire bloodbath. The vampires are sadly barely in the movie though. In the previous two movies, you really got to know the vampires and their personalities, especially the head vampire. But in this film, they're all really forgettable. In fact, that's a problem with the entire film as a whole. It's really forgettable. It feels at times like a very average straight-to-DVD sequel. There is nothing really unique or different about it at all. But the film isn't all bad. When it's not dull and boring, it's actually a lot of fun. It's much more enjoyable than the previous movie, and there are a lot more jokes. The film feels much closer to the original in the comedic style that they had back in, and of course because of the return of both of the Frog brothers. The film is very well paced and never has a dull moment. The only problem is, because the action isn't incredibly different or memorable, you end up forgetting most of the film. There was of course a long gap between the second and third reviews for this series, but I watched the movie literally the day after the second review went up. That means it's been almost 3 weeks since I watched this movie and I've still forgotten a lot about it. It feels like I watched it much longer than that 3 weeks though. Sadly, because I can't remember much about the film, there isn't much else I can say. I gave The Tribe a very high rating and it definitely didn't deserve it in hindsight, but I'm not going to go back on it now. The First is a far superior movie, but it's still nowhere near as good as the original. I give Lost Boys The First an 8 out of 10. The first Lost Boys movie was fantastic. I really liked it. However, the sequels, although are enjoyable, are just nowhere near as memorable. Now it's time to rank the movies from worst to best. Number 3 and worst in the series is Lost Boys: The Tribe. Number 2, Lost Boys: The First. And the number 1 and best in the series is the original The Lost Boys. And that finally wraps up my reviews of the Lost Boys movies. It also finally wraps up Horror Season 2014. I won't be doing another purge of reviews next year, since I would like to return to what I did in 2013, where I reviewed 31 completely different movies. Next year I'm going to be doing a themed month, and to make sure all 31 reviews are done, I'm literally going to be working on them all throughout the year up until October. I originally had another series planned for Horror Season, but since it's now almost December, I don't think that's gonna happen at all. I'm still gonna do the series that I was originally planning on doing, but I'm probably not gonna do it till maybe January, because since it's almost December, I wanted to do 2 Christmas-themed series that people have requested me to do. I know technically I'm skipping loads of films on the list, and one of the films I'm gonna be reviewing was only actually requested a couple of months ago. But still, since they're Christmas related, I'd much rather do them instead of doing something completely different that has nothing to do with the month. So, I'm gonna start off with reviewing probably the most recent of the 2 requests, just simply because it's easier to do because I've already got most of the DVDs. So, come back soon for my reviews of the Die Hard movies.